Today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite topics. If you've ever wondered, should I sell my current house to buy my new one, or should I keep my current house as a rental property and then buy my new one? That is what we're going to be talking about today. There is a lot to cover, so let's just jump right into it. My name is Connor Olson. This is the Living in North Austin YouTube channel. If you have any questions about relocating to the Austin area, whether it's in 9 days or 9 months, feel free to reach out. My contact info is right there. Give me a call, send me a text, or send me an email. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about relocating to the Austin area. Or specifically today, we're going to be talking about whether you should be keeping your current house and buying a second house, or if you should sell your current house to buy the next one. So right off the bat, let's just talk about the basis of this video. I get asked all the time of people who say, I live in this house, it's too small for our family, we need something bigger, we're ready to get a larger house, ready to move to that other part of town that we really enjoy, but we don't know if we should hold on to this current house that we live in and keep it as an investment, or if we should just sell it and get the new one. So that is our topic that we're going to be talking about today. So I love this topic personally. I am a real estate investor myself. I own rental properties, so I really specialize in working with other investors. So I feel like I have maybe a little bit more insight into some questions that you should be asking yourself if this is the right move for you. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. It's just going to be, we're going to go through a bunch of questions that you should be asking yourself. And depending on how these questions work in your personal situation, then that will help you decide whether you should keep your house as a rental or if you should sell it. So there are 3 types of questions that you need to be thinking about. You need to be thinking about the finances, the current housing market, and then if it's personally right for you on a personal level. So let's start off with the finances. So the basic assumption here is you have a house that if you rent it out, you'd be making money every month, and you're planning on, I guess, either getting a larger house or downsizing. It doesn't really matter. It works out both ways. But the assumption is the rent is going to be higher than your mortgage payment every month. So for example, let's say your current mortgage payment is $1,500 a month and your rent would be $2,500 a month. You can, easy math, there's a spread there. You're going to be making some money if you move out and put a renter in there. So that's the baseline of what we're going to be starting with. So the first thing to think about is the tax implications. Now, a lot of people don't know that there is a section of the tax code, section 701, that talks about capital gains exemptions on the sale of a property. So what this says is if you are a single person and you sell a property for a profit, the first $250,000 of profit is tax-free. If you're married, that goes up to $500,000. So for example, you buy a house for $300,000. You live in it for 20 years. You sell it for $800,000. You have a $500,000 capital gain that you typically would have to pay taxes on. For example, if it was a stock, if you bought $300,000 worth of stock, it's now worth $800,000. You sell it, you'd have to pay taxes on that $500,000 difference. In this case, it is tax-free. So on that sale of the property, you do not have to pay taxes. So that is the first thing to ask yourself is, how much would I make if I sold this property? And am I going to be incurring a taxable event? Will I have to pay taxes on my profit? So that is the first thing to know is, how much did I buy it for? How much am I selling it for? How much improvements did I make along the way? So for example, if you bought it for we'll use the same example. You bought it for $300 and you're selling it for $800. So there's a $500,000 gap. So a lot of people just say, oh, buy and sold. But over the years, you replaced the roof, you updated the kitchen, yada, yada, yada. You kept receipts, obviously, because you've owned the house for 20 years, you obviously kept all the receipts, right? So let's say you have $100,000 of updates that you've made over the past 20 years. technically your cost basis of that house is now gone from $300,000 to $400,000. So technically capital gains is going to be 400,000 instead of 500. So that's a big tangent. I'm going to ramble a lot in this video. So that's just something to think about is, what did you buy it for? What improvements did you make? And what are you selling it for? Once you know those three things, you'll know if it's going to be a taxable event for you or if you will qualify for this Section 701 taxable exemption. The second question you need to ask yourself is, for your next property, let's say you know roughly the price point you want to buy in the area you want to buy. You don't need to know specifics, you just need a rough idea. Can you afford that mortgage currently? So let's say you have a house that you're going to sell for $300,000, you want to move into a $500,000 house. The first thing you need to know is you need to go to a lender and say, can I afford a mortgage on a $500,000 house right now? So they will ask you a couple questions. The first thing that you'll want them to run is, can you afford that $500,000 mortgage if you sold the first house? So that's the first thing you need to know. So the second thing you need to know is, what will my mortgage affordability be if I rented out my current property? So we're going to use this back example of your mortgage is $1,500, the rents you're going to get on the property is $2,500. So you have roughly $1,000, there's expenses in there, but you have roughly $1,000 a month. Will that help you afford the next house? So for example, let's say, the lender says, no, you can't afford your $500,000 house if you sell this current one. But if you keep it as a rental, we can use that as new income to help you qualify for it. Well, then in that case, it would be better for you to keep the house as a rental to help you buy the house that you eventually want. So the third question you're going to need to know is, what is the monthly profit that you're going to make? Now, it's not just going to be your rent minus your mortgage. You need to set aside money for future repairs and future vacancies. And if you have any question about how much money to set aside, feel free to reach out. My info is right there. I run analysis for investors all the time, so reach out. I'm happy to help you figure out what the right amount for you is to set aside. So now you know how much monthly profit you're going to make by renting out your property. You need to figure out if it's worth it to continue to rent out the property based on the return that you're going to get. So this ratio that you need to calculate is called return on equity. Basically, it's just saying you have X amount of dollars in equity in the house and you're going to make Y amount of dollars per year. Is that return normal? Is that return good in today's economy? For example, let's say that you make $1,000 a year by renting out your house in profit and you have $1 million of equity. That is going to be a 0.1% return on equity. It's probably not worth your time. It's probably better to sell the house and put all that money in a different investment than it is to just keep that as a house and rent it out. So, using that same example, if you make $1,000 a year on, let's say you have $10,000 of equity in the house, that is a 10% return on equity. It's pretty good. So you need to figure out how much you're going to make on your house and then how much equity you have, and figure out if that's a good return for you. If you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out. Okay, the second type of questions you're going to need to ask yourself is, what is the current housing market doing and what is the current state of my house? So if you're wondering what is the current housing market like, you need to be thinking about, is my city currently growing? Are homes selling quickly? Are they renting quickly? Are things slower? Are homes sitting on the market longer? Are they not renting at all? Those are good considerations that you need to figure out if this is worth you holding onto the property. If you are in a city with a declining population and people aren't relocating, it's probably not going to be worth it to hold onto the property. Luckily, if you're in Austin, you're going to be just fine because we have a ton of people moving here and our population is just constantly growing like crazy. So that is something that you need to figure out, is what's the current housing market like? What's our population trends of the area? And how quickly will my property rent out? Will it rent out for what I want? Well, do I want it to be higher than it actually is? Things like that. You need to figure out what is the housing market and kind of go from there. Next question you need to ask yourself is, what is the current condition of my home? Let's say you bought your home brand new 2 years ago. It's in great condition, nothing's gonna break for a while. That's awesome. On the flip side, let's say your home is 100 years old, there's constantly things breaking, you don't like dealing with the headache. Maybe it's best for you just to sell the property and move on. So it's important to know the market as well as what your current house quality is and how that matches up to the other homes for rent and the other homes for sale. The final question you need to ask is, how much is a reasonable appreciation over time for your market? So you're going to be making the majority of your money off of the appreciation of the home. It's not going to be off of the monthly profit you get off of the rent. A lot of times it's off of the appreciation. So you need to think about, what has my property been doing from an appreciation standpoint over the past 10, 20, 30 years? What will it likely do in the next 10 to 20 to 30 years? And is it worth it? So appreciation is definitely a huge thing that you need to factor in. It's hard because you can't pinpoint appreciation. You can't accurately know where it's going to be in 10 years. But by looking backwards and thinking about the current state of the housing market and the current population that's either coming or going from your city, you can kind of figure out where the trends are going to be in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Okay, next we're going to talk about the personal questions that you need to be asking yourself. And the first and most important question you need to ask yourself is, do I want to be a landlord? Yes, I have gotten to this point in many conversations, and people, try to talk themselves into it financially, try to talk their house into being a good rental product, but then they ultimately say, I don't want to be a landlord. And then I think, why don't you start with that? That's kind of the first thing that you should know is, do I want to be a landlord? Now, there's a misrepresentation of the effort it takes to be a landlord. I hear all the time people say, I don't want to fix a toilet at 2 a.m. A lot of people are landlords and do not do that. For example, if you hire a property management company, you don't hear from the tenants. If anything pops up, they have the number of the property management company, and the property management company will handle all maintenance requests, all the 2 a.m. toilet fix calls. So first question is, do I want to be a landlord? And second is, am I going to hire a property management company or not? I think that is a huge determining factor on if it's worth it for you or not. The second question is, how long do you plan on holding the property? If you're planning on, you want to hold it for the next 10 plus years, probably a good idea to hold on to it as a rental. If you want to hold on to it for the next 6 months, probably not great. So I think it's really important to think, where am I going to be? What are my life goals in the future? And does this fit in with my life goals? If I want to, sell everything and move to Europe, probably don't want a house in Austin, Texas rental giving me headaches every couple months. So I think figuring out your life plans and then thinking, how long do I want to own this property? Those are both really important things to ask yourself. So the third question you need to ask yourself is, how will renting or selling this property impact my next property? I touched on this a little bit, but one thing to consider is, let's say you don't have the down payment for your dream house. Well, then you probably are likely going to need to sell your current house to get the down payment for the next one. So that's one thing to consider. And then, like I touched on earlier, is how will renting this property out affect my ability to buy my next home? So both of those things need to be answered on, which one personally is right for me. The final question you need to ask yourself is, what is my emotional connection to this home? If you are not emotionally connected to it and you're okay if a renter comes in and, kind of trashes it a little bit, then that's fine. If you are very connected to this home and you're very emotionally attached, then it might be difficult for you to see someone, not taking care of the house the way you took care of your house. So I think this is, again, one more important question is, how tied am I to this house? Because that can definitely make a huge impact on emotionally how you think about it going forward. Okay, that is it for today's video. It was a very niche topic, but I surprisingly get asked these questions quite a bit. More than happy to talk to you about your personal house, if it's right for you to rent or if it's right for you to sell it. Personally, I'm always a fan of renting whenever you can. I like holding real estate as a diverse portfolio, mixing in with stocks and bonds. So I think it's very important to diversify, and I love real estate. I love rental real estate. So if you have any questions about your house and whether it should be rented or sold, feel free to reach out. I'd be more than happy to answer any of your specific questions. My phone number is down below. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.